As soon as Mr. Sarsfield sits down, we will get going. I know, I was just waiting to make you the bad person, don't worry. All right, I'm going to call us to order. And as I was saying, this is the last Civic Works meeting because after this, it's now assets and management, or assets and infrastructure. So this is the last, just remember the name is changing for the next time. So I've called us to order and I will ask Mr. Sarsfield to do a roll call, please.
Thank you. Members of the Standing Policy Committee, Councillor Croson.
I'm here.
Acting Mayor Middleton Hope.
Are you turning people on?
Oh, yes, sorry. I forgot about that part.
Nope.
That's not you.
You turned me on.
I have to find you.
Okay, it's not like I don't know the answer, it's just it took a little while for the mic to come on.
I apologize, I forgot
I'm
my
present.
role.
Thank you.
Councillor Palladino.
Yes, I'm here.
And
Councillor Parker.
he's upstairs and should be down directly. So
Okay.
as soon as we see
And
him.
also attending from members of council is Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Perfect. So we have quorum and we will continue. I will go on to the acknowledgement statement. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also the home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Moving on to motions. Mr. Sarsfield, are you new at this job today? Mr. Westerson is off right now. So adoption of the agenda, I have a motion from Councillor Palladino. Be it resolved that the agenda of the regular meeting of the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee of October 5th, 2023 be adopted as presented. Councillor Palladino.
I'll call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. We have an agenda. Moving on now to the consent agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the minutes of Civic Works Standing Policy Committee held on July 6, 2023 be approved, and the Chair and City Clerk Designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee receive as information the status of initiatives 10/05/2023. Acting Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the agenda?
I think we're good.
Then I'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. So we move on now to presentations. And our first presentation is on snow and ice control service level change implementation, phase 1 completion status, stakeholder feedback, and then the phase 2 outlook. And Ms. Ruck, are you the one talking to it, or Mr. Jewell, are you starting? You're both doing it. You have to come to the podium because that is our hot mic and it allows us to have more mics on up out here. So welcome, and please tell us first that we're going to get enough snow to replace the water that we need, and second, that as soon as we get that snow, you'll remove it from the roads.
As far as weather goes, no guarantees, but we will be removing it from the roads as quick as we can. When it does arrive. I'm Darwin Jewell. With me is Julianne Ruck, Transportation Operations Manager. And over on the far side is Megan Williams, as well as Heather Gowan, our communications people. You notice 2 operations folks and 2 communication folks.
Balance.
It's a good balance because it's all around communication and data now, not as much as doing the work. It's around communicating how the work is done. So I'm just going to turn it over to Julianne. I'll be available for any questions. And to try to frame this, we're talking about a trial or a phase 1 trial that was 23 kilometers of roads last year. And we actually have 580 kilometers of roads in the city that we have to maintain. So it's a very small snapshot right now as a trial. She's going to give you the outcome of the phase 1, what we've learned, what we saw, and also a snapshot of what we're going to do in phase 2, which is more kilometers. I'll turn it over to Julianne now.
Okay, thanks for having us here today. Really excited to give you an update about this. So yeah, as Darwin said, we're going to give a status update about how phase 1 went, We're going to focus on the parking enforcement we did, the snow route declarations, the feedback that we gathered, and also what we learned during operations. Included in our presentation today, so this hopefully is just a 10-15-minute presentation, we also attached a couple of reports, a very detailed what we heard report about all the communication and engagement that we did with residents, and also a short project summary, just 6 pages, that you can reference later on in your questions. And, oh, who is doing the slides? Okay. Can we go back to the agenda? Just one more. Next slide. Yes, thank you. Before we dive in, I just wanted to acknowledge a couple of team members, especially our operators that worked all last winter. We had kind of really difficult conditions with rain coming and then temperatures suddenly dropping. They did a tremendous job. Most of them worked Christmas, New Year's Eve, just to keep the roads safe and drivable for our residents. Also, we worked very closely with our parking enforcement team, coordinated well during this phase 1. And also, I'd like to really thank Megan and Heather for all the hard work that they did communicating and informing residents. All right, next page.
It's not advancing, my apologies.
No, that's okay. Can we bring it over there? Okay. All right. So as you are aware, Council has the snow and ice control policy, CC 34. Thank you. Where we define our service levels for snow and ice control fairly well for the city. In there, we stipulate that we have the obligation to create reasonable winter driving conditions on city roads, pathways, and sidewalks to allow all modes of mobility. So in total, we have 580 kilometers of road to take care of, and we have to differentiate between plowing, where we just plow the snow to the right, and an operation that's called snow removal, where we bring graders in, put it all in the middle, then come with snow blowers, load it up in trucks, and take it to a snow disposal site. So traditionally, historically, before we started all of this, we had in total 205 kilometers of plowing roads. That's priority 1, 2, and 3, and 118 kilometers of snow removal routes on top of that. So that is a lot of road network. And KPMG identified that in 2020 and suggested to us to look at service levels and decrease the snow removal operation and increase plowing, because that's what's pretty common in other municipalities. We developed some service level options, presented that to Civic Works Committee in March 2021, got direction to consult with the public and key stakeholders regarding these service levels, and then came back with the results from this consultation and presented that to first Civic Works Committee and then Council in June 2022. We had good results, good participation in our consultation. There were 770 responses regarding snow and ice control, and the majority wanted to see more plowing. We presented everything, and Council gave us mandate to implement these changes in a phased approach. We did phase 1 last season, and we are rolling out phase 2 starting next week with information for the residents. Next slide, please. So as Darwin mentioned, the phase 1 included 23 kilometers of roads. 1,800 households were impacted. We selected areas in North, South, and West Lethbridge. The unique thing about these areas is that they used to be on historic snow routes, but we rarely ever declared them. Like we rarely ask people to move their cars off the road. So during phase 1, we tested both things. We asked people to remove their cars, and we also plowed to the right instead of doing snow removal where we would just put it in the middle. So last winter, we track all the events. So we had 9 total snow events, and only 6 had enough snow accumulation that triggered snow route declaration. Like we want to make it worthwhile, all this effort. So as you can see there in our table, the actual snow accumulation on average was 10 centimeters for these 6 events where we declared snow routes. The temperatures really fluctuated, as I said, created some challenges. We found operating and plowing these routes that it's really good to go 2 cycles. Like we got a lot of questions from residents, oh, once you are done, once I see the plow, can I come back and park? We found we plow once, apply salt and sand. The salt has to kind of loosen the bond of this ice and the road. And then we can come back a couple of hours later with plows and remove more snow and ice off the road. So that's why we figured out 2 plow cycles are really good. Also, one of our goals was to not inconvenience residents for too long by restricting parking in front of their houses. So we tried to do this all really quick. Just the operation took in general 17 hours, and parking bans were in place for 36 hours. So again, less than 2 days where people couldn't park in front of their houses. Next slide, please. So along these 23 kilometers, 1,800 residents were impacted. We contacted them all at the beginning with this really nicely designed snowplow postcard. And we also installed just along phase 1 areas this little blue snow route tab that indicated that you're on a phase 1 route and that these changes are happening. On top of that, we contacted 1,140 residents that lived along historic snow routes. We just let them know, yeah, you live on the snow road, but you are not impacted at this time. And then we did a big project kickoff and media event and had lots of communication tools in place, like our project-specific web page. And we really emphasized the use of the Loop app that you get notifications. Like that graph there on the slide is our Loop app subscription activity. And as you can see, activity really increased around the events, where people subscribed and wanted to be notified by us when snow routes are active. And we also pushed out a message when we deactivated them. During the phase 1 and these 6 events, the first 3 events we just issued courtesy parking tickets. Again, there was a QR code on there and information about the program, educating people how to stay informed. And for the last 3 events, we issued real parking tickets, and only 6% of those were challenged by residents. Next slide, please. Throughout the whole project, we had plenty of opportunity for residents and stakeholders to give us feedback. We had an open online survey on the Get Involved page the whole time. We were at the January community conversation event in person. We had a snowplow there, and people came to our booth and could ask questions. We used lots of these other tools, and then we had at the end of the season a survey that was a self-selected survey with good turnout, 205 responses. Throughout the project, we also engaged key stakeholders like post-secondaries, the school bus provider, and other internal city departments, and had good discussions with all of them. I wanted to point out from our season end survey, I have this question number 8 there, where we ask about the appropriateness of the service level. And approximately 40% said the service level was adequate or it was even too high. And then almost the other half of responses said that it was still too low, and that means we weren't quick enough and we didn't create good enough of road conditions in their opinion. Next slide, please. So all these learnings from our phase 1, we are now trying to inform phase 2 for a wider road network, 83 kilometers, approximately 6,000 households in total. Phase 1, the 1,800 are part of that. So we want to leverage the tools that are very successful and identify more motivators and barriers for this service level change. We will again install snow route signage along all the phase 2 routes. That's already underway. And one of the feedback items we got is that we have to indicate clear with little arrows on those signs where the school zones start, where we won't do plowing, and where parking bans won't apply. So we're implementing that. We'll also directly communicate with all residents along. Like today at 3 p.m. we'll have a media event informing that we are dropping out of postcards starting next week for all the new phase 2 residents, and former phase 1 residents will receive a letter just saying this project is still underway and operation Plowing to the Right will continue. Additionally to that, we are focusing and opening up the Loop app and encouraging everybody to subscribe to that across the whole city. Everybody can now get those notifications for through route activation. And we were also able to upgrade the snowplow tracker, where you can see the snowplows and the name of the snowplows driving along priority snowplowing routes. We were able to upgrade that with a layer that now includes the 83 kilometers of snow routes, the new ones, and a color indicator if they are active or not active for the people that don't want to subscribe to Loop. We will make some adjustments to some school bus loading areas based on the feedback that we received. And we also talked to Lethbridge Transit and Access-a-Ride operators to make sure that when there's accessibility issues with loading and unloading people, that gets communicated directly from them to us, that we can address the situation. Also, we are creating some term position for the plow drivers just to have enough capacity to deal with 83 additional kilometers, and a dedicated resource for snow events and the parking enforcement just for those events. At the end of the season, we'll have again a survey where we will analyze the feedback. And also throughout the project, there will be on the Get Involved page the opportunity to provide feedback throughout the project and then or leave your feedback with 311. The one thing that we already realized during phase 1 is that residents are very much aware of the benefits of plowing, that plowing is a good operation, quick and fast, but that they are not really aware of the cost difference from plowing to snow removal and how big of an operation snow removal actually is. And also the benefits of snow route implementation, parking bans to make our operation more efficient. So we're gonna focus some of our messaging and tools around that. We are developing a video with more content about our service levels, an infographic, and also Heather has built some web page messaging already about service, how it is provided. The other major outcome of phase 1 for us was that we totally recognize that the shoveling of driveways and sidewalks is challenging for people. And so we are looking at developing a program where we encourage neighbors helping neighbors. We researched that's fairly successful in other communities. So just to have something in place to support neighborly help. And I think after COVID and everybody living in their own little house, this is probably the right time to broadcast something like that. So yeah, so that's the end of our presentation today. I know Thanksgiving, I think the temperatures are in the forecast of 25 degrees. I hope that residents still won't ignore all our information that we hand out next week, and that they'll follow our motto that when you see snow, you're in the know. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm looking at the audience, and I think everybody in the audience is staff, unless, do you guys want to question each other? Because it is Standing Policy Committee, so if you want to question another department, oh, no, never mind. I do know that I have colleagues who would like to ask questions. So first one up is Acting Mayor Middleton Hope, and your red light's already on.
Yes, Mr. Sarsfield is very quick on the button. That's great. I have a few questions. I'd like to direct them to Mr. Sanchez, if I could. If I may, actually. I know I can, but if I may. Mr. Sanchez, what was the cost of snow removal for 2022-2023? We indicate that there's a budget of, I think it's 3.8 million. Surpluses and deficits go over to the MRSR, so I'm wondering, based on this strategy, did we have a surplus or a deficit in terms of our snow budget, snow removal budget?
So that's a great question, and I will defer that to the expert, Mr. Matthews, who has those numbers for me.
Good afternoon, members of Civic SPC. In regards to the actual, for 2022, I think I'll start there. There's $4.8 million. That was the actual spend inside of 2022, over a budget of 4.5 million. And in 2023, there is a budget of 4.6 million, and currently spent 2.6 million. But we're forecasting that this will come into, be balanced by the end of the year. It's a little early at this stage, even though it's warm, to be thinking that we might have a surplus there yet.
So the budgeting amounts that we're doing or have done the last couple of years in particular, irrespective of the change to the phase one approach that we're doing, we seem to be fairly close to being within budget. Is that fair to say?
Yes, in the last couple of years, so last year we had, so in 2021, we had a surplus of $1 million. 2022, we had a deficit of about 300,000. So if you look at the years, we're in between, we are okay. But overall, if you look at the cumulative effect on the MRSR, and this is the reason we have it, we're still short to the MRSR about 6.6 million from 2008 all the way up to 2022. So what that is showing is just the weather patterns that are going through. We did do quite a budget change, I believe, if my memory serves, around 2017 period.
Yeah.
And we've increased it since. So we're looking like we're in the right range now.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question I have
Mr. Jules wants to answer.
If I can add a point of clarification as well. Daryl mentioned the total budget for snow removal, $4.5 million. That does include, part of that is park snow removal. So the transportation portion of that is still correct at $3.8 million. So that's correct, $3.8 million. The other thing I was going to mention, he mentioned the surplus in 21 and the deficit in 22. And we always forget how good or how bad the winter was in years past. In 2021, we didn't do a stitch of snow removal. So we didn't do any snow removal because the weather was so good, it melted, nice Chinooks. 2022, I believe we did 2 rounds of snow removal in the downtown and the hospital area. That was, and I think the winters were not that far apart. Like 2021 was just not much better, but the Chinooks helped us out.
Right.
So the snow removal costs were so significant. That was the $1 million surplus we had in 21, and the deficit in 22 is not, I wouldn't say partly because of the trial, but it's also because of the weather patterns, but it's also because we picked up arterial road plowing on as a new service level. We took that over from parks. So it's a complicated thing to do all of that math.
And you're still operating within a 4-year envelope.
Exactly, yes.
Right. So deficits and surpluses carry forward into each one. So at the end of the 4 years, which would have been the end of 2022, correct? The end of 2022?
I believe the snow removal portion, the MRSR picks up deficits and surpluses every year.
Yeah.
And so it'll balance out over a 10 or 20-year time frame, but it's not a 4-year operating budget. So the rest of the transportation operating budget is a fixed budget, and then we'll figure it out at the end of the 4-year time frame.
Right. So are you comfortable with the expenditures versus I guess the deficits versus surpluses, the expenditures that we're experiencing in regards to snow plowing,
Yeah.
as opposed to snow removal?
In fact, it was May of '22 when we came to City Council or Civic Works Committee, I believe, with the snow reserve deficit report. And I quoted then, over a 10-year period, we were $1 million to the good. Darrell mentioned over the previous years, we were seriously deficit $6 million. We still have a lot of room to make back that extra money. But over the last 11 years, because I keep keeping tabs on every year, we've been $1.7 million to the good. It's gone back into the reserve over the last 7 years. So I believe our operating budget is adequate to handle the average snowfall. What we're trying to do here with this plowing to the right concept is, do you remember 2009, 2011, 2018, when we were $2 to $3 million over budget? That's what we're trying to avoid, is those big over expenditures.
Right, of course, good. Thank you very much.
Oh, just a moment. I believe Mr. Sanchez wanted to comment on that question as well.
Just, it's not only on that question, but as an overall, a quick reminder, and I think Mrs. Rock did an excellent job explaining that during the presentation, is that this program here is also allowing us, one way or another, to get to those roads where we didn't have a chance before. Because before, we only got there when there was capacity, but now by not doing the snow removal, by plowing to the right, we are getting to those that we were not able before. So in one way, the level of service is being a little bit higher while maintaining the cost that we have, which I think is an excellent news for us an overall, and we're going to year 2. Again, I want to remind that ideally we would like to have this in place for 2-3 years to have full cycles and see how the weather varies, and then that will have or allow us to get more information to do the changes that we need at that time.
Okay, nobody else wants to weigh in on that one?
I do.
I've still got more questions, but do you want me to step out and let my colleagues go ahead, Madam Chair?
Why don't we go to Councillor Palladino, and then, yes, we can jump back in.
I'll come back.
Okay, Councillor Palladino? Oh, Councillor Palladino. No, you turned my microphone on, not Councillor Palladino's. Okay, Councillor Palladino, you're fine now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, most of my question has been answered. However, I want to say the positive feedback you're receiving is good news, through your community engagement. I like terms like cost-intensive and operational efficiencies. I think that means we're saving money either on wear and tear on equipment or timing events. I guess it's all boils down to money. So, yeah, I think the questions have been answered. Thank
That's
you.
one of the easier questions we've had, so we'll go back to Acting Mayor Middleton Hope. You're red.
Great, thank you.
Now you're off. Just a second. You're red.
I'm good. So this question will be back again, I guess, to Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez, where are we with the ice crusher equipment that we discussed last spring?
So I will defer that to Mrs. Rock. She can start the conversation, and I will add, if need be, we did some research, and I know her and her team did some research with a few vendors and other communities, and she has some information that she can share.
Yes, so I was really intrigued when you brought that up last year, that equipment, so we looked into it. We talked to the vendor, and we were not able to find anybody in Alberta that uses this. I did find a municipality in Alaska that operates 5 of those. They had mixed reviews. So this is a rolling drum with spikes that crushes the ice, but only up to 2 inches, right? As deep as the spikes can go. Then you still have to remove all these ice chips afterwards, especially with the Chinook conditions that we experience often. So it's a bigger operation than just loosening up the ice. And this equipment is around $40,000 to purchase, the drum, and it only lasts 400 hours of use. So with all our snow and ice control changes, my recommendation right now would be just to wait, see if plowing, where we get quick to the roads, remove the snow from the roads, is creating good road surfaces, and then go from there. The ice that we had last year, that's not very common for Lethbridge, and it creates challenges no matter what equipment you use. So that's our recommendation.
Good.
There you go. If I can add a little bit more, I know I met with the team a while ago, and, and today in prepping for this meeting, we actually resurfaced that information too, is with the changes, as I mentioned before, that now we're getting to those areas that we didn't get to those before. There is an opportunity that phase 2 will allow us actually to deal with that in a different way. One of the concerns I know talking to operations and Julian's team was that you might need to go 2 or 3 times, depending on the depth of the snow. And not only that, you still also need to go back now and remove it. So now we're defeating the purpose of what we were doing here, because if you leave it there with the Chinook, it will freeze and then it will be worse than what it is. So we say, let's give it a try to phase 2 and see if it works. If after all this, we still have that opportunity, we can always do a pilot in one area. We pick an area in the city that we know is very difficult to deal with, and then test this equipment. But in talking to other municipalities, what they did, we didn't find one that is actually using this type of equipment, other than in a small private operation or in an area, an airport or something like that, that they really need to get to those conditions.
I just anticipated we might be innovative here. Good. Well, thank you very much for that. Anybody else got another question? Because I got one left.
Why don't you go right ahead with your last question, or your next question?
So this might be a question to our communications folks over on the far side. So our methodology of communicating with those that are impacted by this along the phase 1 and now in the future the phase 2 route, is there an opportunity here to better inform the public about when we're coming around to do snow plowing? By that I'm thinking in terms of an alert on cell phones, something of that nature that people can sign up for. I know that there's some strategies that we're utilizing, but I'm just wondering, is there an enhancement that we can do to inform the 1,800 people that are currently affected? And I think Mr. Julia indicated there's another 5,000 or more? 6,000 more people that are going to be affected by it. So I recognize that there's a fairly large number of people, but the alert system that the provincial government uses to provide amber alerts and so forth, I'm wondering if there is an opportunity there for us to do a flash alert to people along the phase 1 routes or the phase 2 routes that move your cars, we're coming, we're going to be there in the next couple of hours. If you don't move your vehicle, it's going to be towed. Do you think that would enhance the relationship that we have with the public in terms of levels of complaints and or concerns?
Threw the prop on the ground. Thank you for the question. So the Alberta Emergency Alert tool that you were referring to, this kind of a notification for residents wouldn't meet the criteria in order for us to be able to use and send it, but
no, you recognize that I'm not talking about the Alberta Alert Program.
Yeah,
I'm just talking about something like it.
Yeah, so the thing that we do have is the Lethbridge Loop app. So that has the ability to send a service alert to you at the time when we declare a snow route and then when we deactivate as well. So as Julianne mentioned, we've seen an increase in subscription rates and downloads from residents since we've been piloting phase 1 and as we move into phase 2. The benefit of the Loop app is also that you can receive waste and recycling reminders on it as well as planned power outages. So we are trying to find ways to leverage the current planned service outages that we have for residents to get them to find more reasons to download and use it. So that in combination with the direct mail pieces that we've been doing, a robust advertising campaign plus the direct mailing options as well, we feel confident in being able to let people know that we're coming by using all of those tools.
Excellent. I just have to download an app.
That's it, and it's free.
Or ask any member of staff to help you with it.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Driveways, I don't need.
There are obviously our existing 311 infrastructure tools as well, and also the web development content that we've been using. So as you'll remember, we named quite a few fun snowplows last year, and we have an AVL live tracker map with those available. And that map also shows when snow routes are activated and deactivated as well. We also obviously use our social media channels as well to let residents know that that's happening, and then public service announcements are sent out, as well as our friends in the media who amplify those messages as well. So we feel we have a pretty good coverage in terms of letting people know when snow routes are activated. Obviously, we're not going to reach everyone all of the time. We can't help it if you don't open your mail or have a phone or go outside, but we do our best to try and impact those that will be affected by these changes. You're welcome.
All right. So just one final question that I have is what we're trying to do here is find the balance between getting more roads done, being as effective and efficient as possible, and at the same cost, and also providing this service, right? The people who were unhappy were the ones who had to do additional shoveling, the ones who, were impacted. Do you think as we're moving forward into phase 2 that we have found the right balance? Do we have that balance, or will you be tweaking that balance? Just in general, where are we heading on the balance? Do you think you have met it?
I'll try to answer the question and give Julianne an opportunity as well. She's the operation manager. She takes a lot more heat during the storms than I do.
Or cold.
But I also made sure the phase 2 is on my personal road. It just happens. So I'm going to have the firsthand look at it as a resident. I think we're trying to balance efficiency and cost, but we're also trying to balance the residences on these plow to the right routes. The balance there is they do get a more clear road. It's a higher level of service for them. But the negative side is they also have some driveway clearing. Remember, they still have to clear the sidewalks regardless through the snow removal bylaw anyway, but it's extra work. So when I do it this winter, I might be griping about it, but I'm also going to help out my neighbors and my other neighbors and do the good neighbor thing. So we're trying to balance what we're asking the public to expect. I also wanted Julianne to talk a bit about the compliments we've had from some residences saying, thank goodness you finally got my neighbor to move their vehicle when we're plowing, because they never would. So I wanted to mention the ticketing that we've done very consciously. The first 3 events, fortunately we only had 6 events the entire winter. We had a good winter in that regard, but the first 3 we only did courtesy tickets. The next 3 events we ticketed the $25 ticket that's your no parking ticket. Every time from the beginning of the year, the November event, till April or May, that last event, every time the number of tickets declined. And that was a huge learning for us because people are getting it. And I go back to when we did the same thing 5 years ago in street sweeping, where we started ticketing on street sweeping routes. The same story goes there. We ticketed 1,800 people in year 1, and then 1,200 people in year 2, and then 700 people in year 3. People are getting it, they're moving their vehicles, they're adjusting to the new normal. So I think that's the lesson we learned. You have to have snow routes declared, and you have to have a consequence for not moving your vehicles. And so now when we go from 23 kilometers to 83 kilometers, it's more significant. We're expecting more people to either complain about it or to give us compliments about it, because it will be a higher level of service. The other thing I did want to mention, of the 580 kilometers we already have, we still do snow plowing on 120 kilometers of priority 1 and priority 2 and priority 3. 120 kilometers is priority 1, another 50 to 80 kilometers is priority 2 and 3. So none of that has changed, but we've added the extra snow plowing to the right on these roads that never got plowed before. And that is really they're only maintained when there's major snowfall, and we call that emergency snow removal in the past. So the local roads and everything else. So it really is a higher level service at no additional cost or very little additional cost. I'll let Julianne talk about that.
Yes, there's something you'd like to add to that? But and again, you have to come up there, the people online can't hear you. If there's nothing you want to add, that's fine. Okay. Ms. Williams, I have one more question for you as well. You're talking about all your public engagement, but I think there's one piece of public engagement you forgot. The one that you can't control as much, us. One of the things I might suggest for any project is make sure that council gets speaking notes, because we will be asked about those things.
For sure.
And you probably want us saying what, like the accurate information. So if we could make sure we get some speaking notes, because when they bypass 311, they come to us, and to make sure that we're giving accurate information about why we're doing it would be very helpful, and that's for every project.
Yeah, absolutely. We're also using the upcoming community conversation event. Phase 2 will be there as well, so we'll definitely provide you with some speaking notes if you're planning on attending that as well.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, anybody on council? So just by virtue of asking the most questions, Acting Mayor Middleton Hope gets this motion. It was already on there beforehand, don't worry. Be it resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends council-direct administration to continue with the implementation of Phase 2 as described in the Progress Report Attachment 1 and report back to Assets and Infrastructure Standing Policy Committee in the spring of 2025 on operating budget and resource impacts. Acting Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. It was fulsome, informative, and let's hope it works this winter. I think what we've heard is that it was very successful last year, and we're just simply going to leverage that for greater success in the coming years. So thank you very much. Unless there are any other comments or questions from my colleagues?
I don't see anybody else trying to have a red light, so I think we're good.
Then we'll call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously. Thank you all to your team, and we'll see you in the spring, if not before. You just wanted one of the, well, I thought you wanted one of the snow machines named after you. Moving on now to Opportunity Lethbridge presentation on Watermark Outline Plan Amendment. Who? Oh, I know they only came for snow. I think Watermark, now we had snow, ice, and water. They should have stayed for the entire thing, but that's okay. So, Ms. Gutzel, is this yours? Perfect. Welcome. Tell us all about the Watermark Outline Plan and what you're changing.
Thank you very much. Like Councillor Cosin said, my name is Janet Gutzel. I'm the Senior Subdivision Planner with the Planning and Design Department, and I'm here to present on the proposed amendment to the Watermark Outline Plan. So the application before Civic Works...
Sorry. You can't actually shut the door that way. You have to push the button on the inside. You're going to wreck the door. We just changed it when we did the renovations here, so that's why it's accessible now, but if you don't do it, yeah. Sorry, Ms. Gutzel, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I was really worried about the door and her getting crushed by it.
So the application before Civic Works SPC today is to consider an amendment to the outline plan for Watermark in West Lethbridge. The existing outline plan was originally approved by MPC in September 2017. The reason this application is before you today is that based on the amendments to the Subdivision and Development Authorities bylaw, where MPC was dissolved, Council is now the approving authority for the land use concept for outline plans and amendments to approved outline plans. Next slide, please. So Watermark is in West Lethbridge in the location indicated by the red star on the map, and the amendment has been prepared by the engineering consulting company WSP on behalf of the developer Opportunity Lethbridge. Next slide, please. So the plan area contains approximately 141 hectares or 350 acres of developed and undeveloped land, lying south of Varsity Village and east of Mountain Heights and Sunridge. The area shaded in blue shows the extent of the Waterbridge area structure plan, and the area outlined in red, the east half of the shaded area, represents the Watermark outline plan area. Next slide, please. So the Watermark Outline Plan Amendment has been prepared in accordance with the policies and objectives outlined in the South Saskatchewan Regional Plan, the Municipal Development Plan, and the Waterbridge Area Structure Plan. This amendment complies with all documents around housing types, neighborhood design, and commercial accessibility. Next slide, please. Taking a closer look at the two maps, you'll notice that there are layout changes in each area of the neighborhood. The updated plan provides guidance on how land is used, serviced, and accessed to be more efficient and meet current market demands. New design approaches in the updated Watermark Outline Plan include a modified grid, road, and pathway design that supports efficient multimodal connections, equitable access to parks and open spaces dispersed throughout the community that are connected by pathway and trail system, housing choices within the community with opportunities for no-step entry or visitable housing, as well as low and medium density housing types to meet the needs of the Lethbridge community, and the design of the Watermark stormwater management system to take advantage of the area's existing topography, resulting in a large central pond. The amended plan has been reviewed by staff and all technical concerns have been addressed. Next slide, please. Our evaluation and analysis is on the slide above, and I've spoken about the details in the previous slide. Next slide, please. So the neighborhood notification covered the area around the outline plan, and 140 letters were sent out. The proposed amendment was also advertised in the September 23rd and 30th editions of the Lethbridge Herald.
Oh, for some reason your microphone shut off.
There we go. The developer conducted engagement, which they can speak to. I received one phone call from a resident concerned that the original plan showed a pond behind their lot, and that has now been changed to lots past the 15-meter linear park. I also received an email from an owner asking for confirmation of the linear park width. That's a linear park that will go along the existing houses to the east of the plan. Next slide, please. So our conclusion and recommendation to Civic Works SPC is on the slide above. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gutzel. So Mr. Croyle, as the applicant, would you like to do your presentation as well? Now, just to make sure everybody knows, any applicant, not just a city department, would be able to make a presentation. So as the applicant, here's your opportunity.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And thank you for the opportunity to speak with Civic Works SPC this afternoon. My presentation is similar to Ms. Gutzel's, so we can skip a couple of slides. If we could go to slide 3. We'll just touch on a few things that get a little bit more in depth in terms of what is changing as compared to the previous plan. So we've already heard a little bit about the alternative road design that's been put in place, new and more accessible open space locations and design, more innovative residential housing designs, including the visitable housing that will be incorporated into some phases of the development, and will also be taking advantage or greater advantage of the existing topography in the area as compared to the previous plan. Next slide, please. One other point of note, just in terms of what this plan represents from a livability perspective, is core values. These weren't necessarily present in the 2017 version of the plan, and here we've identified that the core values of this plan in particular include to sustain, grow, play, connect, and belong. I'll very quickly take you through what each of those means in context. Next slide, please. So in terms of sustain, we point to the idea of respecting and recognizing the importance of water and land in the area, and not just from a use perspective, in terms of drinking water, but also controlling water within the development. In terms of land use, we're looking at creating more efficiency with using the land that we have. So understanding how we can enhance the amenities of the neighborhood while also increasing the number of lots and number of people that will call this area home. Next slide, please. When we look to grow, we're obviously thinking about a place to live. Who will call this area home? And opportunities to learn include looking at how proximate or how close this new development will be to a number of the schools on the west side of Lethbridge, including Senator Joyce Fairbairn, which is actually within the community itself. Next, please. Moving to play, the whole idea is to get people out of their homes into the public amenity areas of the community, including those amenities that exist there today, skate park, playground, pump track, and future amenities that will be more equitably distributed throughout the community with, we think, a superior version of parks and open space design as compared to the 2017 plan. Next, please. When we speak to the idea of connect, obviously we're thinking about connectivity of the neighborhood within itself and also to other parts of West Lethbridge. So this would include regional and internal pathways that link to the community other than just by vehicle. Next, please. And finally, we speak to the idea of belong, which is really focused on that idea beyond accessibility and mobility for people on their individual lots, the idea of visitable housing and the benefits those types of housing units can provide. Next slide, please. So a little bit more detail on visitable housing. Specifically what it means is you're unlikely to have thresholds or really any major elevation change between the outside of the home and the interior of the home, making it more easily accessible by people with limited mobility, wider doors interior to the home, and other features such as fully accessible washrooms. Next, please. So some of the benefits of visitable homes include core planning principles that we strive for today, including being able to age in place, which means people can age for longer, better in the communities in which they currently live, whether that's by moving from an existing home to a new visitable home or purchasing a visitable home as a first step into that stage of life or limited mobility that people may be experiencing. Just a little bit more on visitable homes from a marketability perspective. There are other communities this is based on in Alberta and Manitoba, for instance, that have seen very strong sales for this type of housing. It typically represents about a 1% increase in the cost of bringing that house to market from a constructability perspective, which in the Lethbridge context and our average new housing price would be anywhere between $4,000 to $5,000. So not a lot in the context of what you gain from this type of housing. The next couple of slides are really just reference points to show the land use statistics for the old versus the new plan. So we can actually skip right to slide 14, which provides a bit of a summary as to how this new plan uses land differently. The proposed change for total hectares represented by the area is a little bit of an anomaly in the sense that it's probably just based on exactly how the numbers were added up with the titled properties that Lethbridge land holds. In terms of roads, we actually reduced the number of acres of roads or hectares of roads required while still maintaining connectivity within and outside of the neighborhood. This is important because the capital cost of roads up front can be saved and long-term maintenance costs are also saved. If we combine parks and stormwater, we actually have an increase of about 2 hectares for the amount of total parks and stormwater amenity features that we have in the community. The total area for public use is down about 6.6%, and the net developable area is up about 4.5%. Within all of that, it means that we can actually increase the population potential for this neighborhood by about 20%, which is significant in terms of efficient use of land. Now, Ms. Gutzel already took us through a few comparative images, so we can very quickly make our way through slides 14 to 18. Slide 14 shows community layout differences. On the left, we have the 2017 plan. On the right, the proposed amendments, and this is the same for the next 3 slides. So this is general community layout. You see the new road networks and layout, and on the next slide, we would see the new and more equitably distributed park spaces within the community. On the third slide here, we have active modes connections, which are more drawn out in terms of exactly what those regional and internal pathways and connections look like as compared to the original plan. We also have an enhanced street network on the next slide, which again just shows the hybrid approach taken between what we would call a gridiron street network on the left and more of a hybrid between a gridiron and a curvilinear street network on the right. If we go to the next slide, we can speak very briefly to a targeted dialogue that was had with surrounding residents surrounding the area in question for the amendments. And at the time, a virtual open house was held, which had about 20 people attend from around the Watermark Outline Plan area. There were no major concerns provided or shared at that time, and most people were supportive of what the plan represented. If If we go to the next slide, I can very briefly speak to what the next steps look like for this particular area. We'll look at a visitable housing feasibility study just to make absolutely sure that we're bringing the right product to market in the phases where we can include this types of housing over this winter and next spring. We will prepare development guidelines in consultation with consultants that provide that type of service. And then phase 1 lots are set to begin sales either in 2024 or 2025 based on market conditions. Beyond that, we'll look to what the market is looking like in terms of when next phases would come online. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions the SPC may have.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Croyle. And we do have some questions. We'll go first to Acting Mayor Middleton Hope.
Thanks very much. Can you walk us through slide number 14 again in terms of the enhanced land availability for, is it specifically for building more homes? Is it more parks? Is it more recreation area? How do you envision this transformation from where we were in 2017 to perhaps now?
So I might just wait for that slide to come up so we can
you bet.
reference it. So effectively, we would look to this as our balance sheet in the sense of we're keeping track of what each area of land is being used for. Overall, we believe that this plan represents a more efficient layout that provides more equitable access to public amenities. So if we go to slide 15, it might be a good reference point to just make note of the fact that we have parks and open spaces that are more equitably accessible by people on foot and by bicycle throughout the community rather than fewer parks that are centralized and may not be as accessible to some members of the community that are further away from those areas. So that would be one thing to make note of in terms of how the land is being used. And the other component would be specifically with the 17% reduction in amount of roads being used, we can include that many more buildable areas for lots, which means we can increase the total population without necessarily having to increase or change the general mix of single detached to multifamily housing.
Okay. The pond, the stormwater pond, is a fairly large addition, which removes a substantial number of potential residential lots. And this is being made up because we're reducing the number of roadways in and out?
I would say yes to that. That sounds like the correct comment, but I think I would probably want to defer that to our engineering consultant, Trent Purvis, which is with us today.
Sure, they're here, why not? Bring them on up.
Hi, I'm Trent Purvis. I'm with WSP. We worked with Opportunity Lethbridge to prepare the plan. On the issue of stormwater ponds, the new plan looks like it has maybe a larger stormwater pond, but it's actually very similar to the previous plan. There were more ponds spread throughout in the previous plan, and this plan more centralizes the stormwater management, which is one of the benefits of taking advantage of the topography.
Yeah, no, I think I can see that. Okay, thank you. One last question. And don't let the engineers walk too far. A request likely has been received from Lethbridge Fire and EMS Services to extend McLeod Drive / Great Bear Boulevard to connect to Métis Trail to improve response times. When will this be completed?
So I can answer the first part of that question, then I may actually turn it over to Mr. Sanchez or Mr. Purvis to provide additional background. Ultimately, what's going to dictate the timing of Métis connecting to Great Bear Boulevard will be the market. And that's simply for the fact that there would be a lot of throwaway costs to build that road in the land's current state. So we have to wait until the need for future phases of development catch up to the area where those two road right-of-ways would eventually connect. There is a note in the current CIP budget that shows that particular connection being on the books. However, even in that part of the CIP budget, it speaks to the idea that it will be entirely market dependent. So with the way the market is currently, that's not necessarily indicative of what we would expect an average 10-year market condition to look like. even if the market picks up a little bit over the next 3 to 5 years, we would still expect this would be at least 10 years out.
I appreciate
Just
that.
Before you continue, Mr. Sanchez probably could add some of that before you respond.
He was lasering in on me there.
Yes, he was.
Yeah, I think in this case, the developer had an answer on his point of view, which is correct. That's exactly aligned with what I was going to explain here. And at this point, the offsite levies have this project scheduled for after 2030. And again, it's all depending on the market conditions, like any other offsite development that we do is depending on the developer and the growth of that area. And with that being said, again, there are always opportunities that we can work around, and I know there have been conversations, you're correct, with Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services and the developer and the city in terms of what options are there for that. It could be something like a gravel road in the meantime, but again, is that conversation on how do we pay for that and how much of that cost, like was explained before, will be a throwaway cost. At this point, is still far away, but depending on the necessities that we have, there will be an opportunity to sit down again with them and see what we can do.
I appreciate the comments, although I don't view it as throwaway costs. I think the way in which, and I won't speak for Lethbridge Fire and EMS, but I think the way in which they have explained it to me is this is critical for connecting to places on the west side and reducing response times. So I don't see that as a throwaway cost. I see that as essential.
Well, I think at this point, what they're saying is they have no plans to build it at one time, and if council sees it as a priority, that would be a direction from council. So I think that's basically where we are right now. It's not going to be happening from their perspective until we build some houses. If we want it faster, that'd be our decision.
And I appreciate that. I think it was important to just simply hear that it's predicated on market conditions. And if council wants to make this a priority in terms of security conditions for our neighborhoods, then that would be something that council would have to bring forward.
Do you have more to add to that? Have you been whispered more answers?
If I may.
Go right ahead.
So just to put a little bit more context to what some of those throwaway costs would be, as soon as we pave a road or create a base and pave the road and connect everything, we have to take all of that out in order to put deep and shallow services in and make sure all of the utilities that need to connect to that future neighborhood would be in place. And as everyone is aware, the cost of anything these days is not cheap. So that cost is going to continue to rise, and we have to make sure that we make best use of the money that we have available to continue the development. Another component of it would be that we have some opportunity in some situations to potentially align a temporary road or a road that's in place prior to development occurring with a future laneway or something that may not require services underneath it. Just by a quick look at the proposed amendment map and the layout, it would be incredibly difficult to find that route and make it effective.
Okay. Mr. Sanchez, back to you.
Yes, just to add one more time, I think you mentioned, you nail it when you say if we get the direction, we can always look, and I will do that. I will talk to, in this case, offsite levies, and the main issue here is where is the funding coming from? And if this is offsite levies, we all know the conditions that the market is right now, and even the offsite levies has been impacted by the reduction of development in the community. We have seen that less lots are being developed, and there is not that cash flow that we need in order to maintain these offsite levies. And we have been proactively looking at the projects and see what we need to stand in order to make sure we also need to pay the debts and the borrowing that we have done for that. So it's a balancing exercise. But we can always look at options like Spencer mentioned before. There could be other work that can be done, but how much is going to cost? We can look into those. And I know Fire has been talking to Mr. Busunis and the staff in what options are there. The conversation, I checked with him a while ago, and I know over the last year they have met a few times to look at a solution for this.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Oh, no. Okay, we'll move to Councillor Palladino's question. Oh, nope. You just shut off what Mr. Sarsfield gave you. There you go.
Now,
You're good now.
Is this live now?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for the presentation. I can definitely see why the improvements over the 2017 plan were needed. The modified grid concept is a good hybrid of old and new subdivision design, so it works pretty good. I'm curious, though, with respect to the housing choice, what determines where the visitable houses will occur? Do you implement, how do you implement that no-step entry and like, do you put them on a map, or do you tell the builder you should do this?
Certainly, through the chair to Councillor Palladino, that's a great question, and I'll do my best to answer to the best of my ability. I may have to pass it to Ms. Slovak, who has a little bit more background in this type of housing. My understanding is that it has a lot to do with the depth of services that need to come into the home. So because there is a need for, typically, if you're going to have a basement in this context, a deeper sanitary service, it would have, in some instances, to do with grade and where the depth of sanitary is coming into that part of the community that's being developed. So it would only be certain phases that would be easily able to accommodate this type of housing. Did I get that right?
Okay, yeah, and so, and are you shooting for like 5%? Did I hear that somewhere?
No, I was simply saying the additional cost of including that type of housing in a build is about 1% of construction cost.
And this may sound like a rhetorical question, but the plan suggests, or the plan talks about taking advantage of the area's topography to manage stormwater. Isn't this normal good planning? Anyway, you've done this all along, I'm sure. So that was just like I said, you don't have to answer that. I'm good.
Perfect. My parents have not a house that's flat like that, but they have an accessible home. And for aging in place, it's absolutely amazing. So I'm so glad to see we're moving in that direction. And you're right, for the little bit more you're paying for not having to move, eventually and all that, I think they will hit the market and be very advantageous for the people who are able to get those. So the question I have, do they require any different zoning, or they're just a house, visible housing?
It would be a house like any other house. It can be developed as long as the physical conditions are right.
Do we have plans for supportive housing in this neighborhood for the zoning, or to be already in place, or is it already in place?
I believe there's at least one site that would be, two sites that would be zoned for the opportunity for supportive housing.
So we're already thinking about that to make sure it's something we can have. You're increasing density with this plan to 29. What is the average density for the city at this point, and does this kind of fit into the average? The reason I ask, I'm sure you're aware, we often get told when Opportunity Lethbridge does it that you guys get advantages and we're not, matching everything else. So how does this fit in? Because this plan is actually increasing by 1,000 people.
What I can tell you is our estimated average density for the community is 1 unit per hectare greater than the minimum required by the municipal development plan. I would have to turn to my colleagues in planning and design for what the average across the city is.
Yeah, Ms. Gearing, do you have that number in your mind, or? Well, oh, no, looks like Ms. Gearing is coming up. I know I've seen it in some document, but I just can't recall right now.
So across the city, the average is 27.
So we're building more densification here than elsewhere.
That's correct.
Perfect. That's actually very nice to hear. And Mr. Croyle, just again, I know the answer, but just to ask, as a developer, do you get any advantages over any other developers in the city when it comes to, how you work with the city and the access you have, et cetera, to the city?
I would say confidently that we do not, and we actively work to ensure that we act on a level playing field with our private side developer partners.
Okay, perfect. Like I said, I knew the answer, but I'm sure you're aware we get asked that question a lot with our city developers. I don't see any other questions from here, so thank you all very much for your answers to this. And we have a motion from Councillor Palladino. Be resolved that the Civic Works Standing Policy Committee recommends Council approve the amended land use concept for the Watermark Outline Plan as per Attachment 1. Councillor Palladino. Oh, no, you're good. Don't touch anything. Yeah.
Thank you. I believe the updated outline plan is a vast improvement over the current plan, for sure. The modified grid road design supports multimodal transportation. Open space is dispersed throughout the neighborhood, and taking the area's topography to manage stormwater is essential. Your core values of the plan say it all: Sustain, grow, play, connect, belong. You did a good job. And for the above reasons, I will ask that this committee recommend that City Council approve the revised outline plan. Thank you.
We have debate. Councillor Parker?
Thank you. Not so much debate. I just want to compliment the plan. I think the plan looks really good. You got two subdivisions that you're kind of abutting. You got, you have Sunridge and you also have Mountain Heights, and two subdivisions that Mountain Heights is years ago, and then you have Sunridge is early 2000s. So I think it really melds well in the whole area. I think it looks really good. I'm encouraged. I also like the process that we've gone through when we do these things in regards to public input. I know some people are concerned about the lake no longer being there, but I think the justification has been answered. So I think overall it's a great idea. I know the area, it's hard to believe this plan was developed 2017. It's hard to believe 6 years ago. So, and also we have to realize too, as members of Civic Works and as members of City Council, that markets change and things evolve, and so we have to be nimble in this process. So I think this is reflective of that, and I will be supporting this.
Perfect. I too will be supportive of this. I love some of the innovation you've brought in here. Like I said, visitable housing, even though I've heard of the concept, this was the first time I came across that actual phrase, and I think we'll be using that a lot more because I'd like to see that in a lot more of our plans. You've already got plan for supportive housing. You have a plan that looks really amazing that people will be wanting to live in, but has that density. You've thought about how people are going to get around in this. You've met the community needs, and it's overall a great design. So thank you very much for the work you've done, and absolutely in support of it. Back to you, Councillor Palladino.
Thank you again. I just want to say before I ask for the vote that I noticed that this is adjacent to Ryerson Road, where I built my first house in the city in 1978, and I bought a lot from the city. I got one of the returned lots, and it was $11,250. That's what I paid for that lot. So I'm hoping these lots are going to be in the same price range.
A lot of people are hoping.
Yeah. Anyways, I will call a question on the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned. Acting Mayor Middleton Hope said we'd be done at 3. I said 2:30. We're right in the middle between them, so not bad. Thank you all, and enjoy your Thursday.